Greetings once again, and welcome to the Top Tech Talk Show. This is Chuck, and joining me today is somebody that I have known a long time and just feel super comfortable talking all this crazy tech with. It's been 20 plus years since Brent Britton and I actually got together in a more social environment, and he kind of taught me some lessons about intellectual property. And that has just guided everything that I've been doing now.
I'm so fun at parties.
And he's hey, brilliant at,
Can I tell you about patents?
let me point out my patents while I play this little ditty for you. You know,
patents like I know patents.
Oh boy, what patents we'll have.
It's funny you use that phrase a long time, because whenever anybody says I've known this man for a long, I always think of, Obi-Wan, who's like, there's a name I
haven't heard in a long time.
A long time. And it's like, Obi-Wan, it's your name, dude.
Right?
That's all anyone called you, like, in the 80s. Come on, man.
Come on, like, get with it, dude. I mean, the Clone Wars are over, right? So now that we've totally nerded out in the first 2 minutes, I think that's perfect. I just wanted to point out, Brent has I'm going to call it a fairly new legal enterprise, but it's along the same veins of what you've been doing forever: corporate law, patent law, copyright, IT, entertainment.
So here's what they tell you. That's what they tell you. They say if you want to get more business, you got to specialize. And I didn't believe that. Well, it's not that I didn't believe that theory, but it's hard to break from being a generalist.
Right.
It's hard not to try to be all things to all people when you're in the services business. Yep. But I finally decided, you know what? I'm going to start my own firm. I'm going to call it CoreX Legal. We're going to be devoted to technology law.
Love it.
We are a general commercial practice, but we pitch ourselves as ideal for the technology company, or the big company that's not a technology company but is doing something in technology.
Yeah,
that we can help them handle.
When I've introduced you to friends in the past, I've always said he's a digital IP attorney. You don't find that specialization in anybody's legal description, and here you are online, and pops up right in my timeline just as I'm doing crazy digital stuff in this Web3 world. So,
truth be told, there are a lot of great technology lawyers, intellectual property lawyers. Right. There's a lot of great lawyers out there who do what I do. But it is a bit of a specialty. Corporate lawyers are doing capital deals, and other lawyers are doing other deals, and this is a bit of its own little specialty practice. But we pride ourselves on specializing in it.
Well, and we've had some discussions that's led up to other conversations that is now today we're online talking about. I got to say, it couldn't have been more prescient, it is a good word, for seeing what you had posted on LinkedIn just yesterday about patent law and why it may or may not be, a good thing for especially things like competition and technology.
If you're advancing the state of the art in any technology, then you're entitled to own that exclusively, and that's why you get a patent. If I invent this water cup, you can't steal it from me. You can't take the cup. I'll get you arrested for theft. But you can look at the cup and you can say, oh, look at that fancy little slider thing there. I think I'll copy that. And so you can go copy the cup, and you can sell 1 million of them, and I can't stop you unless I get a patent. I get patent on your invention. Is how you stop people from copying your invention and selling it to people. So it's just generally a good idea, because you know why? Investors really like it, and co-founders should like it as well, because your job as the entrepreneur, as the driver, the helmsman, the captain of the ship in a startup company, is to maximize shareholder wealth. Unless you're a benefit corporation or a nonprofit, your basic job is to seize all lawful opportunities to maximize the value of the company. Makes sense. Patents are one such opportunity. So if you're inventing, you should be patenting just on that principle alone. However, it's also important to realize that the world is lousy with patents, and everyone's patenting everything all the time. IBM has throttled back recently. They've been the #1 patenter in the world for decades, and they recently decided, we're not going to stop doing all that patenting. And I'm not really sure what the philosophy is there, but the point is, everyone's out there getting patents all the time. We are now a first to file jurisdiction, which means if I think of an invention and I'm working on it and you think of it too and you file your patent, well, you get to keep the patent, and I don't, even though I thought even if I invented it first. We used to be a first to invent jurisdiction, but now we're not.
I'd heard something about that recently, and it was in like a pop culture reference, and that really surprised me. I was kind of shocked that we've gone that direction.
Well, we harmonized with the rest of the world, who was doing that forever anyway. The United States was the last holdout at first to invent. So, and then generally, just it's a good idea. Here's the thing. From the offensive perspective, you can put competitors out of business or make them pay you to use your invention if you have a patent, which is, nice stream of income. And if you get sued for patent infringement, somebody threatens to sue you for patent infringement, and you don't have any patents, then those settlement discussions tend to be pretty short. Like, oh, okay, I'll write you a check. But if you do have patents of your own, chances are if you're infringing theirs, they're probably infringing yours. And so then you get a sort of mutually assured settlement, if you will. So it's good. Patents are generally a good idea. I get that they're expensive, and I get that there are some people who use them for evil rather than good, and that's unfortunate. But that doesn't mean that they're a bad idea for the company to obtain. It's like fencing in your property. It's not like
I mean, it belongs to you. You have the right to protect it.
No, it's more like buying it. It's more like having a attack dog. Okay. Is what it is. Patents don't just sit there protecting people from coming onto your property. You have to weaponize them and basically sue them or threaten to sue them in order to make them stop. So that's a better metaphor.
All right, so the question has to come up then, in this world of we share everything online, we overshare.
We do. I don't know if we overshare.
No, it depends on who you are. I've seen some overshare. You're not so bad, but I've seen your vacation photos, so that
you have, right? And if my wife in a bikini was offensive to anybody, then I would stop posting it.
Change the channel. It's really easy,
just just move along.
Yeah, but that being said, Brent, in this world where advancement is so important to technology, and sometimes an open source code or shared resources and APIs, things that allow people to really change the world with applications, is a patent kind of interfering with that? Or are we blocking advancements?
Well, what you're doing, I mean, you're asking people to wait 15 or 20 years before they can practice the patented invention, and what you're doing is you're rewarding the innovation of the patenter.
Much better definition.
Here's what you get. What you get. You get 20 years of exclusivity. Now, mind you, it's 20 years from the date you file the application, which can take 2 or 3 or 4 years or more to actually prosecute. But it's 20-ish. It's 20-ish years that you get. But that's the gift that we in this country have decided to give to people who innovate as a reward for their invention.
Sure.
It's yours exclusively for some period of time. Is 20 years too long in this day and age? I think that's perfect subject for debate.
Well, the internet years,
right, and companies are born and die in 5-6 years nowadays. So and get purchased or what have you. So, and again, the whole patent prosecution process itself can take, as I said, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 years sometimes. So that's the value there is questionable, but. Are we stifling innovation? I don't think so. I think in the balance, we've got a lot more out of our country, of our countrymen and women, because patents are available than we have through the inability to share in the commons. And make no mistake, if you want to patent your technology and your inventions and then give it away, you're perfectly at liberty to do that if that's important.
Why not? Yeah.
But unless you get the patents, you ain't got nothing to give away, is my point. Like patents are how
ownership is everything. That's 100% where we're heading with Web3 technology. And I've been an advocate for the longest time. Web 2 kind of gave us the right to publish and share ideas, which was interesting. I mean, it was the first time we were able to really reach a mass audience with very few resources. That being said, today's world, now who owns what? Where's my stuff? Yeah. Do I have rights to content that I've created online? And then the big one, I gotta throw this at you, AI. We've seen AI creating things.
I laugh at your AI.
There's artists that are losing their minds because people are taking art.
It's crazy. Historically, when we're all sitting around the campfire and Zerg comes over and says, "Look what I did! I hit this thing with a rock, and it looks like it might be sharp enough to penetrate the bison. We should all share this and do this, and we'll all eat better." And that's one way to run your society.
Sure.
And we've abandoned that in the modern world, and now we care about personal property and personal ownership and enforcement of contracts and all the other things that we brought into late stage capitalism.
Yeah.
So now comes Chuck. What are you going to do with your time when you're replaced with an AI?
I'm just going to be like a talking head. How different would it be, really? I mean, it's not going to be hard to digitize me and do what I do.
I'm telling you. And listen, it's coming, and it's coming fast, and it's coming strong, and it's getting better every day. Now, I can tell you who's not going to be out of business anytime soon are stand-up comics, because I asked ChatGPT to produce a set for me of bespoke humor in the style of Jerry Seinfeld.
Oh, wow.
It was shit. I'm sorry. We PG-13 here?
We're all good.
Oh my God, it was horrible. Literally, one of the jokes was, isn't it funny? Have you ever noticed how the alphabet begins with A and ends with Z, but you can never find your A? That was literally one of the jokes. And I'm like, what the fuck is this thing talking about? Moron. Freaking Nimrod. That's not artificial intelligence. That's artificial stupidity.
Anyway, that's real world stupidity. We don't have to farm that out. We got enough of it out there, you know?
I'm saying, right?
Right.
But I tell you, the end is nigh, okay? I mean, right now, in terms of everything that's right with ChatGPT and OpenAI and all that they're doing, and Google and Microsoft and everybody else, you know, it's not long before even many creative, innovative things are being done by AI. Because here's what AI can do that we can't. Hey, here's a protein. And here's a virus. Let's figure out all the ways that we might be able to kill this virus. And we got a billion solutions in about 5 seconds.
And you know, life-saving solutions as well. Obviously, there's real-world applications for stuff
which
like
brings
that.
us back to the ownership issue. Because
there you go.
Producing life-saving
of the genome. I mean, now we're talking.
The pharmaceutical world will tell you they're entitled to recoup their billions in testing and all that before they. But you know, if it's all happening in 5 minutes and the AI is guaranteeing that it's safe, do we really even need clinical trials anymore? I'm just saying the future is going to be crazy, because if I can walk into a VR and I can basically say, build me a castle and build me a hammock on that tree and build me a flock of seagulls over here and tell me a story using this scene and put in a plot twist that's going to make me freak out. All of this generative AI stuff doesn't create anything out of whole cloth. It goes and looks at all the pre-existing stuff, right? So if you're creating generative AI art, that AI has been trained on all the art that exists, or some subset of it, but chances are most of it, right? Maybe with you know, some editing and some human invention associated with bad things that you don't want in the knowledge base, for example. But for the most part, everything's been copied. Everything's been accessed and looked at, and you know, so if I want to commit a copyright infringement, I can take your copyrightable work and I can put it on a photocopier and I can make a copy. Boom, that copy is a copyright infringement, unless it's a fair use, but we're not going to talk about that.
No.
But I've copied your work and therefore it's a copy and it's an infringement. Or I have had access to your work, I've looked at it and said, wow, that's interesting. And then I go off and without actually making a photocopy, I make a work of my own, but it's substantially similar to yours. Okay, so access plus substantial similarity equals copyright infringement. So can you imagine the brick that the size of can you imagine the size of the brick that the average federal judge is going to shit when he or she is informed that the AI copied every fucking thing on the planet?
Every damn thing. And that's exactly where I was headed. Is I've got to know, what's the ownership issue when an AI is used by a creator, even somebody like me. I've got to write an article to support a theory or post something online. All of a sudden, I'm pulling in all this data from AI from every direction, and you know, what do they say? What's that common phrase? You know, plagiarism is when you steal from one person. Research is when you steal from many.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You know, so I'm stealing from everybody. If I'm online taking that data, there's no real difference. How do we argue that in court?
It's a double-sided coin, isn't it? Because if you've copied everything to create the new thing, the new thing may by definition simply just be infringing just by existing. So anybody who peddles that product could potentially be sued for copyright infringement. Notice that you can't sue the AI because the AI is not a person, which brings us to our next topic. Checks notes. Who can own a copyright? Who can be an author? Who can be an author? And the fact of the matter is, it has to be a human. So in order to get a copyright, on a copyrighted work, on a work of authorship, the author has to be human. So anything authored by an AI or painted by an AI or effectively created by an AI is in the public domain by definition, because it's not copyrightable because it doesn't have a human author. Okay, so Here, let us review. You
Please.
create something using ChatGPT and you say, hey, I got this total thing. Guess what? You don't own it. Everybody does. And if you publish it, anybody can copy it and you can't stop them. But, oh, by the way, you might get sued for copyright infringement because it's infringing everybody who came before you.
Pew, pew. I'm getting it from all directions. Yeah.
Double-sided coin, anybody?
Yeah.
Double-edged sword?
Double-edged sword.
Triple-
Yeah. Double
triple-bladed
entendre. Yeah.
yeah, that's a copyright. That's a
All right.
copyright.
What's our legal
Right?
defense though? I mean, let's assume for a moment I've taken the ChatGPT model. I'm creating content and I use that to just do my research and so I can steal from everybody and not plagiarize one person's work. Is there a line there that says, okay, ChatGPT was made by somebody, they've created, may have a patent on it. Are they at all part of the ownership,
No.
chain?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
Just because I forged your chisel in my forge,
Yeah.
doesn't mean I own your sculpture. Absolutely not.
Right
No.
on.
Once
Okay.
you release a tool into the world, but I would say that there's also a middle ground here because if I'm going to write something, if I'm going to write a novel, let's say,
Yeah.
one of those things on your bucket list, right?
Sure.
I'm gonna perhaps use ChatGPT to make some suggestions. I don't know. I might ask it questions like, "What would be an interesting career for this protagonist?" There might be.
Yeah,
enough
why not? Right.
suggestions.
I get you. Yeah.
That does not make GPT an author, and it doesn't lessen my. As long as I'm writing original stuff as a result.
Okay.
If I'm drawing word for word stuff that comes out of ChatGPT.
Well, you're a fool at the moment because it's pretty bad.
It is pretty bad. Yeah, no, it is pretty bad. And
Right
did I
on.
mention the humor? Oh
Yeah,
my
hello,
God.
the humor. Let me tell you.
It was bupkis. It was terrible. But so I don't know. So you have to think what's going to happen here in the not too distant future as this gets better and better and more common.
Yeah.
I mean, I mentioned the federal judge shitting a brick because they can't even conceive of a copyright infringement, of this magnitude. But it's not really going to happen like that, is it? It's going to be like, somebody's gonna publish or sell a piece of art that looks really close to a Dali or something that's still protected.
Oh yeah,
by
I've seen
It's
it
gonna be a
already.
private
Yeah.
lawsuit.
Right.
And there's going to be the same analysis that happens in every copyright infringement suit, which is, are they substantially similar? What do you think? There's no real good standard for substantially similar. It's
I was
one of-
gonna. What's the
you know it when you
percentage?
see
How
it.
do you gauge that? There's no measuring tools, right?
So the judge or the jury, depending on what kind of case you have, will determine whether you're a copyright infringer or not.
Gotcha.
So, and that's when you get in trouble, not ChatGPT and not OpenAI, but you as the person or company that decided to deal in or publish or otherwise use the infringing work. So it's a bit of a minefield right now. And again, look, I'm a lawyer, okay? My job exists because most people don't know how to write contracts and don't know how to read the law, and I'm a specialist in it, so I come do it for them. Like plumbing, really. Like, if you don't know how to braze a pipe, I'm just saying.
Yeah, don't
you might
hire
need
a plumber.
someone
If you got to take fire to water, hire a plumber.
I'm saying, right? I tried to install a sink once, and about 4 trips to Home Depot later, I was like, the market says I'm worth $500 an hour. What the hell am I doing?
What are you thinking, man?
I will pay somebody $200.
Thank you.
So my point is, what I do is wholly susceptible to being subsumed by AI, because we do a lot of innovative and interesting and human brain driven stuff. There's no doubt, and the more intelligent of us can tend to do it better than others. But I'll tell you, the day is coming because if I told ChatGPT to write me a contract today, it would do a pretty good job, but it wouldn't be a Brentified contract. Brent Britton's been writing contract for 30 years, for God's sakes, and it's not going to be perfect. But about 5 minutes from now, it will be. About 5 minutes from now.
I was about to tell you that this was a perfect segue. I had on my notes one more question about what happens when we have enough AI collected in a particular field, and in the specialty that came up has already been, addressed in the media. There was a guy who created an AI with all the legal code and gave somebody an earpiece and said, hey, put this in your ear. We're going to go to court on this.
Yeah.
And they shut him down in our
No, the judge spanked him. No, yeah, the judge spanked him.
And I got to say, I'm kind of glad because I don't think the world's ready for that yet anyway. But there's enough people who've seen sci-fi movies and read stories that are completely freaking out that we're going to be, worshiping our robot overlords any day now.
It's really in flux right now, okay? Because the law and certainly the courtroom is one of those ancient places where we're 5 minutes away from no longer wearing the powdered wigs. You know what I mean? It's a thing. There's something about there's something about the jury of the peers, right? They've got to be your peers. They can't just be random experts in being jury. There's something about coming face to face with the witnesses who are testifying against you. You don't do that by Zoom.
Right,
you do that in a courtroom. It's a human activity. It's a human endeavor. And the practice of law is anointed by the gods on high and protected by the ramparts of the bar exam, so that you can't just pretend to do it. You have to be licensed, like plumbing, for example.
Plumbing, you should be. Electricity is a much bigger deal to me. I'm sorry, I've monkeyed around. I've gotten burned. I know not to touch electricity anymore.
I'm saying, okay, so whatever. I'm just saying, either way, if you're playing with that,
pick your industry.
You got to be licensed.
Right.
But my point is, even if your lawyer is back in the office or stuck in a hospital bed, you can't do that in a courtroom. With the earpiece and the lawyer saying, "Oh, tell him this," blah blah blah. That's just it's got to follow the rules and follow the rules of decorum. Let alone the concept of an AI tool endeavoring to give legal advice. It's very foreign to the profession right now, and it won't be eventually, I gather, and I'd almost wager. And I might have my hand in some of those things, but you're not going to be bringing your AI robot into court anytime soon. I mean, at some point, one can, if you read enough sci-fi, you can imagine a future where we take the defendant's AI and we plug it into the judge's AI, and they go back and forth for a picosecond and come back with not guilty. And they've thought through all the chess moves.
Boy, that would really cut back the billable hours, wouldn't it? I'm just saying.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. Yeah, it's $450 a picosecond.
Yeah. You mentioned things like plugging it in and actually relying on the robots to manage that. I mean, we're not far off really from them predicting behavioral patterns and things like, Minority Report being a reality.
Absolutely.
How do we open up a pre-crimes division to go out and stop people from doing really dumb things? That's human nature, man. We're bound and determined to make bad choices every day.
And look,
what's your legal advice for somebody that thinks that's going to happen?
We've got the robots in our house that are listening to everything we do and say
every day.
You know as well as I do that when you talk about, gee, I'd really like to consider taking up scuba, that before you know it, you're going to get all kinds of ads on your phone and it's and so what happens when the AI overlords detect there seems to be a certain amount of tension in your voice, Mr. Britton. You're not thinking of doing any harm to yourself or others, are you? We'll send someone along to tend to you shortly.
That's how iRobot actually started, and Asimov wrote the 3 laws to be perfect to protect human beings from their own technology. The question became, do we protect humanity from itself because the robots know better?
I mean, I suppose the more bleak perspective is that if humanity is dumb enough to invent its own demise, then it deserves it. Yeah,
that's where I've come from every time we have that argument. Look, if you haven't put safeguards into something like that, then you're just a damn fool. And I have no time for people talking about super AIs and the things that are going to become self-aware, and the Terminator robots are going to come back from the future. None of that to me has ever been a reality, simply because at some point enough people get pissed off and they rally against it. It's going to be an uprising, but it's going to be a human uprising.
Well, and at present, anyway, at the moment, we're not quite over the line yet, but at present we can still pull the plug, right? We can still shut down the electricity. We can ground the drones. Maybe. But if you consider the dystopian AI sci-fi novel case where the AI sort of imposes itself on all the systems, and the AI is at the electric grid, and it's at the machining facility, and it's at the robot controlled car factory or whatever, then you can imagine should the attitude become hostile towards humanity, that it wouldn't take much. And the survivalists and the preppers, the doomsday preppers would be knocking down their door.
So.
Jimmy, I knew it. I didn't think you were right.
To warn you.
Damn it, you were right all along, Jimmy. Please, can my family stay in your bunker?
Right, just don't look in my garage and find bags of rice and beans and stuff right now. All right, I'm not going to bring up that. It's probably too early to bring.
Who knows?
Talking about it.
maybe the AI will treat us as their benevolently, because we are their meat-based creators. That you know, we're basically their god. Although you have to ask yourself if you know, if our God came down to Earth today, we'd probably beat him up for his pocket change.
Brent, I can't. You know what? I'm not saying you crossed the line. I'm just saying that's probably a good break point right there.
Yeah, that's a good break point. Beating up God. Yep. Let's all keep that in mind.
This has not worked to me, man.
Because if one thing enters your mind when you think of your Lord and Savior, it's pugilism.
Pugilism. That's right. Yeah. Do I beat him with a hockey stick or a baseball bat? I mean, you know what? Thank you. I'm going to hell for this one. You're
an atheist and you know it.
Brent, you're the best, brother. Thank you so much for your time.
Chuck, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Anytime.
Never a dull moment, my friend. And we're gonna follow up with this here in 90 days when the robot overlords take over.
CorexLegal.com, everyone. COREX legal.com. I'm at your service.
Thank you, my friend. Take care, Brent.